You mentioned you are holding contacts with some armed groups in Iraq. Under what conditions do you think the US military could cut a deal with them? What are your demands?
Well, the demands are, I would say as a general principle, is that you need to stop hostilities towards every group, and that you need to be willing to work as part of the political process for all Iraqis. I mean, that's really what it boils down to in the discussion periods that go on, is the starting principle out there.
Are you finding common ground on those terms?
We are. When some of these groups understand, the United States has no intention of staying in Iraq forever. We would like to go home. We see incredible value in having a stable and secure Iraq in the Middle East. I mean, the resources that that country possesses in terms of water, fertile land, people, history of that country is just incredible. And what they can do with that nation is unlimited, really, once they put their minds to it and unify together as one nation. And so when we sit down and talk to some of these groups and they understand America has no intent to remain here, that in fact all of us would like to go home as soon as we can, that they start understanding that we're not here for a long term and we don't have any other goals other than to help provide security and stability and self-governance in the country of Iraq.
What are their demands?
Well, it varies. I mean, it depends on what group you're talking to.
The groups that you are currently talking to?
Yeah. Most of the time, they want to know that there, in fact, is a real intent by the government to support all the Iraqi people. Some of the dialogue that's taken place has been encouraged by the actions that the government has taken in the last few months. That, in fact, is helping these discussions tremendously, that they see that there's a hand being extended out to everybody to come together as one.
It sounds to me like you're saying that their demands are acceptable to you. So why haven't we seen a deal between you and at least some of the armed groups in Iraq?
Obviously, we would not want to get into discussing too many of the specifics associated with the ongoing dialogue, but there are, in fact, a lot of things that have already started to take place that it's best if it just is allowed to develop without people trying to scrutinize it and shed light on it for a lot of reasons, because people within their own groups are having to convince others that this is the right path to take. And so we need to give them time also within their own groups of people to talk to each other.
When do you think Iraqi security forces will be ready to take over?
They're doing it a lot more already. In fact...
Well, when will they be ready to take over completely then? In a manner that will allow you to
bring down our combat forces. I don't think anybody would argue that next year that we can bring down the levels of our major combat forces in Iraq. As you watch how the Iraqi army is developing and continuing to grow and professionalize, they get better every day. They get much more dedicated. When you look at the Iraqi police, the fact that 7 Iraqi police officers gave their lives last week stopping a car bomb inside of Baghdad at a checkpoint. 2 years ago, when I was here in Iraq, they would have literally been probably not at the checkpoint. We would have barely hardly seen them, or they would have fled the second that truck came in. A year ago in Iraq, they might have been there, but they would have been very biased in their loyalties towards one particular group or another. Today, they held firm, they stood at the checkpoint, and 7 of them died stopping that car bomb from getting into the city to kill innocent Iraqi civilians. So I have seen progress by the Iraqi police. They still have more ways to go, but I am very encouraged by the development of the last 2 years, and I'm even more excited about what can be in the next 2 years.
I'm sure, I know you're a military man, but I'm sure you do read the opinion polls, the newspapers. Do you at all feel let down by the anti-war movement?
Are you talking about back in the United States?
In the United States.
You know, the great thing about our country is we're a democracy. And back in the United States, people are going to express their views. They may be opposed to the policy, but there's an immense, unwavering love for those in uniform.
But the opposition to the policy, as you described it, and I'm sure you're aware that increasingly the polls say that people don't believe that this war was even justified and that it's worth fighting anymore. Surely that impacts you as a human being. I know you're a general and you've got to speak officially in military terms, but at the end of the day, you have to go as a human being and fight a war that increasingly large numbers of people in your own country don't believe is justified. Doesn't that affect you?
It doesn't over here in the country. And again, you know,
Really? Really,
no,
General?
really, Sammy, I tell you, again, because I'm out there with these young men and women all the time, I have a unique opportunity where I can visit all of Iraq, where some people are just in one area. It's the Iraqi people that gives them their hope. I understand the frustration back in America. We have very short time spans of wanting things to get done. We want to start it and we want to finish it. I mean, that's our national inclination as Americans. But this isn't something that's going to be done in a few days. It's going to be done over years. And perhaps we didn't do as well as we could have in setting expectations up front about the challenges that could exist here. But we're working very hard at doing that now and being very upfront with the American people and stating that this is going to take some time. It's not going to happen overnight.
Admiral Fallon has described the current U.S. military offensive, the current operations, as the last chance. What happens if this military offensive doesn't succeed?
Well, the only thing we're planning on for is for us to sustain forward progress and give the people hope. I mean,
but U.S. reports, sorry to interrupt, but U.S. reports have said that the benchmarks aren't being met as quickly as expected or on time. The Iraqi government isn't meeting them. Surely you're looking at that. You must be preparing a plan B in the back of your mind.
I'm actually not, Sammy. I have got to tell you that, in all honesty, I spend so much time trying to figure out on a daily basis how I can help the whole process move forward. I mean, I put my full energies and attention behind that every day of the week. I've never been as hopeful or as optimistic about the opportunities that exist out there as I am today. And I say that very sincerely.
Recent U.S. Official reports also described the war in Iraq as a civil war in at least some part of it. Do you feel comfortable fighting what is partly a civil war?
I don't agree with that assertion.
It was in an official report. It's not something that is
the
words
that.
of an analyst. An official U.S. report says, in part, this conflict is a civil war. Is that the job of the U.S. military, to fight parts of a civil war?
Our job is to help the people of Iraq gain a stable and secure country with a self-governance that exists for them. And that's what we're moving forward to. There is no question that there is a group called Alqaeda that is trying to incite a cycle of violence between the different sects here in this country. They want to divide the people of Iraq. They want this country to be dysfunctional, and that's their only goal. They have no other purpose other than just make it a dysfunctional country. And so I'm very much against Al-Qaeda, and I want to take that element down. And I'm very much against any other extreme elements that exist out there. Last week we picked up, just in Baghdad alone, 28 death cell leaders. Those who were going out and taking lead death cells to conduct retribution inside of Baghdad. And we captured and killed 28 of them last week. And we have a very focused effort going there too. It's not just Al-Qaeda, it's also these other extremist elements too that will take that kind of retribution. They have to also be taken out.
I know how you feel about Al-Qaeda and some of the other elements, but my question is more, it wasn't part of your mandate to fight a civil war or parts of a civil war, and that is a very sensitive issue for you back home in the US. But your bosses say, according to official reports, that that is what this war has become.
My country's been fighting the global war on terrorism since about 1981. And not everybody has recognized that, but as a military officer, I can tell you I have been very much acutely aware of that and very sensitized to it. And you know, you can walk through and look at all the different terrorist acts that we've dealt with and had dealt on us since back about 1981. Today we're dealing with Al-Qaeda in Iraq. Al-Qaeda is a worldwide ideology that needs to be eliminated. It tried to gain a foothold in Saudi Arabia, and they kicked them out. It tried to gain a foothold in Egypt, and they kicked them out. And it's trying to gain a foothold today in Iraq, and we need to assist the Iraqi people to kick it out of there too.
Final question, and what lesson do you think the United States and the United States military has learned from this whole adventure in Iraq?
That's a great question. That the challenge of time, of communicating what we're doing, of explaining to people what's occurring is very important. To deal with the people is very important. Getting down and being associated with the people and working with the people, even more so than perhaps we did. This is a much less military operation as it is working all the civil aspects of it, helping their governance get going and their infrastructure and everything else. Those are key integral pieces of military operations and communicating with the people that we've become much more proficient in today than we were 4 years ago. I've never been as hopeful or as optimistic about the opportunities that exist out there as I am today. And I say that very sincerely.
Major General William Caldwell, spokesperson for multinational forces in Iraq. Thanks for talking to Al Jazeera.
Well, thank you for having me, Sammy. Appreciate being here.